Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz, a transparent and engaging conversational dive into meaningful topics impacting local government in Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck Insights is dedicated to removing barriers between the City of Bismarck and the citizens we serve every day.
Welcome. This is Bismarck Insights, and I'm Mayor Mike Schmitz. Today we have with us Fire Department Deputy Chief Brooks Martin. Brooks, you have the task of leading one of the largest departments in the city, and we appreciate that. But why don't you share a little bit about you, how you came to your current role, what your kind of your career history is.
Great. Well, thank you, Mayor, for inviting me this morning. I do appreciate being here. Honored to, as we talk about the fire department and the exciting things that we do within the organization. I like to think that my fire service career started really as a young child. My father was a volunteer firefighter in Valley City, North Dakota for over 40 years. So looking at him and what he did in his service to community and commitment are something I followed in his footsteps. I was a volunteer firefighter in Valley City for a short period of time, and then went to school in Duluth for a few years for firefighting, and then was hired in 1994 as a career firefighter in Bismarck. And from there,
you've been with us a while.
I have. I've been with the department for 30 years, which some days seems like a really long time, and some days seems like yesterday. And it's hard to believe.
And so that period of time has allowed you to grow and your career evolve.
Yeah, it's really been kind of, I would have never thought 30 years ago that I would be in the position I'm in. You know, you come in thinking that you just want to fight fire and do things, and now as I've been able to expand my scope and responsibilities with the organization as I moved through the different positions within the department, from firefighter to captain, to battalion chief, and now to deputy chief. I've seen a lot of different things over the years, and a lot of things have grown and changed throughout the fire service and those things. So it's been a very interesting and unique ride, and it's something that I look back and think of, we are making a difference and are doing really good things with the organization.
Yeah, so, I know citizens think fire department, go extinguish the fire, that's the primary thing, but I mean, that's an important thing, right? We're fortunate in Bismarck because we have one of the best ratings, if not the best rating we can get, and that's largely due to how our firefighters are committed to taking action, but also making sure we have the resources in place. But beyond that, what else happens at the fire department?
And I think that's a great segue that, there's a lot of us that we're just the fire department, we just put fires out, and I think there are so many other aspects of the organization that we do. We talk about the fire prevention world, where we put the fires out before they start with our fire prevention division and what they're doing with code enforcement and those things, and then we transition into the other type of emergency responses we have, such as our EMS capabilities and being there and helping with life safety when someone's having a medical emergency, and be able to breathe for them and do things, provide support for that. Motor vehicle accidents, extrications when people are entrapped in a vehicle, and how do they get out of that. And then as we expand further, we look at our capabilities for doing such things as rope rescue, or high angle or low angle rescue with ropes, confined space rescue. We also have the capability of doing structural collapse stuff, like a building would collapse, or if you had a vehicle into a building, what does that look like? How do we shore those things? So we've got a lot of different technical type things that we do that aren't really the putting fires out, but we really are the problem solvers of different things within the community when things happen.
And does that not also include potentially some hazardous material, not cleanup, but containment maybe?
Absolutely. Our hazardous materials mitigation stuff that we do is really, we've got first of all, we've got great people. Our staff that we have is wonderful, but our hazardous material stuff that we've got some really good capabilities there for containing incidents if we need to stop leaks or plug leaks and do different things, and we've got some very nice meters that work really well for us to be able to identify chemicals, identify substances, so that we can mitigate those kind of things, and that hazmat stuff is really important to us, and we've expanded. So the other thing we do with a lot of these things is we're also a partner with the state, and we help the state with any kind of regional response for hazardous materials and structural collapse across the southwest part of the state also.
when we look at that region, then, so if that's the entire Southwest, I mean, just give a kind of a general idea so that, citizens know that, yes, we're the city of Bismarck, but we also help our neighbors. And how far does that really reach in those more specific areas?
Yeah, so more specifically, it's really the southwest part of the state. So pretty much from Bismarck south through Dickinson and that direction down that way is what we typically look at as our response area that we would help if requested from other agencies that would have something that maybe they can't handle, their local jurisdiction, things like that would be able to go into. So.
Okay. And are there other things that you see coming, or maybe a better way to ask that is, how has the Department and Fire Protection evolved?
Well, the evolution of the fire department it's been interesting. Like I said, through the 30 years that I've been within the organization, we've seen a lot of things that have changed over the years. I can remember coming to work 30 years ago where some days you'd maybe get a couple calls, maybe 1 or 2 calls, and maybe some days you wouldn't have any calls for service. And now, today, we see, on the average, we're averaging between 17 and 20 calls a day on average, and some days it's not uncommon for us to see 30 or 35 calls a day for service with our staff and our trucks and stuff. And I think as we see that stuff evolve, there's a lot of things that is becoming new, and technology has really become embraced, and we're looking to see more and more change within how to do things safer, how to do things more efficiently, how to be better at our trade, and some of those things. So we start to see a lot of stuff within that.
So those calls, that escalation, what are the types of calls? Because they're not all to go put out a fire.
Right. The calls, I think a lot of EMS calls. I think as our city has gotten larger over obviously a length of time, we start to see different demographics and different problems coming into play, and we see different types of issues. Maybe it has to do with homeless people, and we've dealt with that, and what their access to medical care is, and those kind of things. And as we start to see different people with cooking and stuff like that, and educating things like that, as we get more volume of people in town, we start to see more and more occurrences of trying to educate people, and then things like that happen. Car accidents with more volume in town again, we see that. Traffic patterns are different here than they are in some of our rural communities, and people sometimes struggle with that, so we don't respond on some of that kind of stuff. So.
Sure. Let's talk, you brought up traffic accidents, and I think of hazardous materials. So the fire department is part of the cleanup of that. How does that, because obviously when a car accident happens, we have chemicals that are spilling.
Yeah, so typically what we'll do is we actually have a really good relationship with the truck companies in town. We'll typically put down floor dry stuff to neutralize any kind of fluids that would be spilled, your gasolines or diesel, antifreeze, those kind of things, and put down, and then they'll sweep those up, and then they'll take those down, those things, that absorbent material, then dispose of it in a proper manner, and those kind of things within that to kind of mitigate that stuff, so we're not leaving that stuff laying on the surfaces of our city roads.
Okay. And that's important for people to realize that that's part of the activity of this department.
Absolutely.
And our emergency response teams in general. Let's talk about staffing a little bit. With this variety of services that the department provides, what are the types of individuals that you're looking for and that you have on staff?
I think of, I had a friend of mine run into me the other day, and she's in the, she's with the state's, one of the state's attorney's offices, and she asked about the department, and she commented to me about some things she'd seen with our department, and her comment was, my gosh, you got really good guys. And I have to reiterate that really, we have very good people at what they do. They're very strong. We look for people that are problem solvers. We need people that can think on their feet and have the ability to figure out how to come up with the solutions in a very quick fashion. If it's the solution is for a firefighting operation or a hazmat operation like we just talked about, or things like that, and how they get that. So we need people that are problem solvers and can be able to do those things and look at that. And so our staffing really, when we look at that, it's really a lot of really dedicated individuals that make us who we are and what they do.
So is every firefighter trained in EMS?
Correct, yeah. So every one of our firefighters is an EMT. So we go through a national registry process to become an emergency medical technician so they can do some basic life care facilities. We don't push drugs or anything like that like the paramedics would do. But we have, we can maintain airways through inserting some airway stuff, obviously control bleeding, provide some basic life support things within that, and stabilize patients upon arrival.
We're putting a lot of responsibility on these individuals, men and women who are firefighters, then to know a lot of things. So we got to put out fire, they got to know how to prevent a fire, they got to worry about some emergency response related health issues.
Yes.
Right? What other things?
I think we look at firefighters as jacks of all trade. Okay. And I think that's the thing that when we look at that is that we don't know what our next call is. And we don't know what we're going to be asked to do. We have our basic foundations of it. Maybe, that structure fire, they're making an attack, but it might be coming into a business because they can smell something, but they're not sure what it is. Mm-hmm. And so they call us, and then we come in now and investigate and try and problem solve and figure out, is it a ballast? Is it a dry sewer vent? Is it something going on in the building? Is it a belt that's maybe malfunctioning on a furnace? Is it something like that? And kind of problem solve and work our way through those things. So it's really when we look at our guys and gals, is that how do we work through those situations and that stuff? And when we look at the technical aspect of it, when we look at the structural collapse and hazmat and the amount of training involved in that, there's a lot of time involved with that.
And so we look at that, when we're hiring, mm-hmm. are we looking for a certain background from people? And then how do we get the training taken care of?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of things we're looking at with backgrounds, we're looking for people that have some life skills. That have some ability to work with what they've done before. Maybe we're looking for people that have construction backgrounds or backgrounds of being very mechanically aptitude, and looking at those things. We look for people that have the ability to learn a lot of different things and retain that and be able to pull that memory up from some of that stuff. So we've got staff that have depth in construction. We've got staff that have depth in just general knowledge and have the ability to think on their feet and look at things as we've trained. So when we talk about training a little bit, I'll maybe transition to that a little bit.
Cool.
Is that, one of the things that we were provided to us about 6 years ago, 7 years ago now, was the city provided us with a fire training facility, and that was one of the, I would think it's one of the benchmarks of the organization, was when we were able to get that in the organization. Really provided us a better tool to be able to train our staff and be able to do better training, so that when they had their first fire wasn't on an actual incident; it was in a training setting and things like that. And simulated
live action, basically, right?
Exactly. So that's really created an environment for us to hire staff that maybe hasn't had experience as a firefighter, but we can train them how to be a firefighter and look at those things within that facility, be able to do that. And now we have an 8 to 12 week an academy that we have, and we hire new folks to give them the basic foundation of the firefighting skills and build upon maybe some skill sets that they have within that to train them to be firefighters. And then we continue to use that building. We'll use that building all year long. We'll use it maybe not quite in the dead of winter when it gets really icy, but we'll be out there doing stuff. And I've always said that burn building's limitation is limited by our imagination. And I know a lot of our firefighters have really good imaginations on what we can do with inside that structure and those different things.
Well, that's great. And speaking further of staffing, just briefly, are we well staffed?
Yeah, actually, we're staffed really well right now. As of today, we've got 6 people going through a training academy as we speak. They'll be finishing up in early December. We've had some retirements over the last few weeks or last couple months, and so we're filling those positions. But we're fully staffed. We're fully staffed as of now. We seem to have been doing well with keeping our staffing where we need to be at. We certainly have seen the application numbers drop, I think, as most people across the country and across the city have seen applications drop. But we do feel that at the end of the day, we're getting qualified people, qualified candidates, and finding people that are fitting and meeting the needs of the organization to be firefighters with us.
Well, that's good. Probably speaks to the, to the quality of the department and its, I lose my words, I'm sorry, but its reputation at least across the city and probably maybe across the state.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I know. One of the things that I enjoy is that I know some of our people that we've hired have been sought after or been recommended by other members of our department, which I think is I think that's the best that we can have when we have people recommend, hey, you should come work for us because we're a good department. And right. I think that's always the thing that makes a guy proud, is that you have people within the organization finding people to come work with us. And so I think that's the ultimate. I think we're doing a pretty good job sometimes.
Let's talk a little bit about statistics.
Sure.
So, what are we seeing? You talked a little bit about some of the calls, but maybe you can just 30 years of history, what's happening with fires, the types of fires, and any other statistics you want to share so citizens know the real activity and the escalation of activity. Yeah,
and I think that's important. I know, like I said, when I started, we probably had 1,500 calls a year, and now we're pushing 6,600 calls. Probably going to be pushing close to 7,000 calls here in not too much time. And when we look at the different types of calls we have, it's gotten to be, we look at things, and let's just use one thing like batteries. When we look at the lithium batteries that are out there now, and then look at the stuff that's coming into play with that's changed the way we have to fight fire and changed the way we have to do things, and how they can't be just extinguished with just a regular hose line and water on those, and we've got to look at some different things. And one of the things we put in our 25 budget for next year was the simple thing is it's called a fire blanket. So if we've got an electric vehicle fire, we basically could encapsulate that fire not with water, but with a blanket to take that oxygen out of it to help smother that fire out within some of those things, or help control some of that within that. The other thing that's really changed is that when we had fires 30 years ago, they didn't grow as fast as they grow now, and part of that was the fact that we had more stuff made out of natural items. We had out of cottons, actual wood, and stuff like that, where a lot of our stuff nowadays is made out of synthetics. And so that stuff burns so much faster and hotter, so our times of fire getting evolved quicker have become more of a thing that we need to address, that the fire's growing faster, and those things where the fire used to say would double in size every minute. Well, now it doubles in size on seconds, and those kind of things as we look at that. So that's really changed a lot within how fast fire develops, which is why it's important when we talk about fire escape plans and people getting out quicker and stuff like that, because the fire growth has certainly changed over the years.
Which makes our response time critical. And let's talk about our response time. It's an average. Not everyone's going to be the same.
Yeah.
Some are going to be longer, some are going to be shorter, but part of us being a highly rated community is based on response.
Right, and it really starts, the response time and the response of us coming on a call really starts with our Central Dakota Communications Center, with them receiving that call. And once they receive that call, they've got a benchmark that they try and meet of 80 seconds to getting the appropriate information, the appropriate stations identified, and then getting that information out to us upon dispatch. And then from there, we basically, the way I always describe this is that I'm going to wake you up I'm going to give you a call tonight at 3 o'clock, and honestly, I won't do that, but I'm going to call you tonight at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to give you a problem, and I'm going to give you an address, and within a minute, I would like you to be in your car driving down the road. And that's the expectation we have of our firefighters, that within a minute to a minute and a half of being alerted of an incident, we're heading out the door. And that's a thing when you look at that.
It's a big lift.
It's a big lift, so we're moving quite quickly. And then from there, we got about a 4.5 minutes that we'd like to be with on scene as our average we'd like to be at. So we'd like to be on scene starting to address that issue. So when we look at that, that's why we're strategically located throughout the city. It's kind of one of the reasons we put the stations where we put them, as we look at that demand for service within that, to be able to provide our services as quickly as we can within the community.
And that leads me into growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as the city continues to grow, we hope it continues to grow anyway, at least I do, we have to be strategic and we're forward thinking, or try to be forward thinking as that goes. So that's why we're looking at, where's the next fire station need to go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And how does the department kind of analyze that?
Well, I tell you what, the one thing that we have in the city of Bismarck here that I don't think I can say enough about is that our GIS division. Our GIS division that we have in the city is top notch, and they're able to provide us some analytics with where our call volumes are at, where we're seeing calls at. We've got the city broke out into planning zones so that we can evaluate where we're seeing calls, where our demand for services are, what the demands we have in those areas are, what the values of the homes are, what the demographics are, what are those things within that. And that then helps us lay that blueprint out of where the next location would logically be for another station.
And I know we have a spot identified.
We do.
When it gets built, we're not quite certain yet, but obviously we're in the planning stages.
We are.
To a certain point, because we have had some growth in the northeastern part of the city. Speaking of just growth in general, though, I mean, obviously put another station when there's a need is important, but as the city grows, what other challenges do you see coming for the department?
Well, I think, obviously, I think, like I said earlier, I think our recruitment attention is really pretty good right now, but obviously that's always a thing as we see nationwide that becomes more and more with that kind of thing. That's going to be something that's always at the forefront. I think road network is always also a big thing when we look at that. And the thing that's interesting about the fire department is that we're so intertwined with other agencies, because a lot of what we do, we need the support of those agencies. So when we look at the engineering division and what they're doing with road networking and stuff like that, and having us to have access into areas like Silver Ranch, and how do we get there, and we look at the expansion of, a good example is the 52nd Street project in Century that's coming next year, and how that provides us access into those areas and that stuff. And so I think as we look forward, those are some of the things that will continue to be a part of at the table, saying, hey, these are the things that are going to help us provide our services better as those demands are needed across them.
I'm glad you brought up that inner working relationship, and it actually it's not on topic, but it is an important thing, because as the city grows and development occurs, there's a reason why the fire department is involved in some of those discussions. There's a reason why the water and sewer departments are involved in those discussions, or sanitary, or the waste collection and so on. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, if we know someone's coming to the city, wants to put a new structure in a more remote-ish outreach, what's the fire department, what's its involvement in that process?
Our involvement in that process really is, we've obviously have a lot of standards and codes that we follow that look at a couple things, such as our access. What do we have to have for access around a building, into a building, and how does that look like? We work with the planning division and the folks downtown to make sure things are set in the right locations with the right setbacks and ability to drive around a building or get hose lines around a building. Work closely with the water department to make sure that we've got adequate flows. I mean, we've got to, just because we have a hydrant there, it's got to make sure we have the adequate amount of water available to that. So how does that look like? Is it a loop system, so it's not just a line at the end? We don't want to be at the end of we don't want to be at the hydrant at the end of the line, because we don't have enough water at that point.
Not enough pressure.
Yeah, so we've got to make sure that we've got those things into place and that kind of stuff happening, so that we've got those things there. So it's really a close relationship with all of that coming into play. Actually, right before this, we had a meeting internally as we looked at new construction coming up. There's a new building coming up in the east side of Bismarck, and we take a look at that internally. Okay, does this have adequate hydrants? Does it have adequate coverage for us to get in and out of the business and the occupancy around the building for firefighting operations, and look at those things? And if we find something that's like, hey, we're not seeing a hydrant that's close enough or something that's not appropriate, it's that relationships that we've built to be able to call and say, hey, we need to do something different. How do we go about getting there? And we do have, we've got good people, I think, in those other departments that really, we work really well together.
And I bring that up just because, I mean, we are growing, and access is very important, and you don't just spin a fire engine around on a dime. It takes a little bit of space, and if it's a larger structure, that's part of the reason for some setback concerns. That's why the fire department is involved in some of those sign-offs.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes, yeah. We've got big trucks, and it is a lot to move that stuff around, and so it's important that we have. It's important that we get stuff designed right on the front end, because if we're trying to do it after the fact, it gets cost prohibitive for those business owners, and we really look at those business owners and want to make sure that we're treating them fairly and giving them the information ahead of time. So we don't want to come at the end of a project and say, oh, by the way, you need to now reinvest this money or change this after you've already done something. So we really want to have their financial interests at heart too, and we just don't do it because we want to or can. There's a reason behind it.
We want to be good stewards.
Absolutely, yep.
Well, Brooks, thank you so much for joining me today on Bismarck Insights. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that we've given a lot of information to our citizens.
Great, thank you for having me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz. If you have specific topics or questions you'd like addressed in future episodes, email mschmitz@bismarcknd.gov or call the City of Bismarck at 701-355-1300. To learn more about the City of Bismarck, visit bismarcknd.gov or follow us on a variety of social media channels by searching BismarckND.gov. Bismarck Insights is a collaboration between Dakota Media Access and the City of Bismarck. You may find Bismarck Insights episodes on Government Access Channels 2 and 602, as well as on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV devices, on Radio Access 102.5 FM, and on demand at freetv.org.